Hello and welcome back to another week of the DP World Tour Picks and Bets. Skylar Hoke here, joined by Tom Jacobs. How we doing, my friend?
Yeah, good. I think it's good that we've had an additional day to get over the events of Wentworth and the BMW Championship, because we looked in great shape through 18 holes, 36 holes, 54 holes, probably even 60 holes, right? And we still couldn't quite get the job done, which was tough.
Man, sixth inside the top 10 going into Sunday, right? I mean, that's just a dream position that you would look to get into. Aberg looked like an absolute menace through 54 holes. I mean, that was probably the least worried I had felt about anybody that was in that top six, right? Two-stroke lead, barely had sputtered. I mean, I think he had two doubles included in there, at least two OB balls in the first 2 days. I was like, man, if he just does anything, he's fine. I mean, what was the winning score? 19? I think Fox got to maybe 18. Fox might have got to 18. Was it 17? I mean, it was a score that
it was 18. I'm pretty sure it was 18.
Okay. So, yeah, because Hatton and Rye got to 70. So, any score, I mean, a traditional day from Aberg wins that. You know, like, that's frustrating. He was bad as I've ever seen out of him. So, frustrating to say the least. And then you keep going down the board. I mean, Aaron Rye was an inch away from getting into that playoff. You know, Connor Seam, if he had kind of kept his cool on the hole where he, tripled or maybe even quadded it, like he could have took his medicine.
He made a pretty good put to triple it. But yeah, out of bounds, then in the water with his provisional, then in the water again was tough. And look, I think you don't expect this from Aberg, who's obviously ultra talented and slightly shorter on the odds board talking about here. But I think with Aberg, right, I think like a lot of people will point to it as like, oh, it was a step up in competition, step up in competitors, like maybe he just didn't have it. But I'm not necessarily sure it was that. I think it's the type of golf course he was facing. There's so much more trouble you can get into at Wentworth. And if you just haven't got it on that day, you haven't got it. And I think that's all that really happened for him, as opposed to, you know, being worried about Rahms and Hattons and people like that. Hatton starting as fast as he did obviously does impact that. But I think we were just so unfortunate with the Connor Symes, the Aaron Ryes. I mean, obviously Rye, great finish in the end to finish second. But like, I mean, he was so unlucky not to even force a playoff. So I think overall, I think we were really good, Sky, at identifying the players that could get in the mix. And it's just a little bit of luck on Sunday.
Yeah. And I mean, Aberg's irons were so good Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's what lost it for him on Sunday. Couldn't make a putt either. I mean, he easily. Yeah, I mean, places weren't around at his number for me. Same with Tom Kim, who played exceptional. Sepp Straka was all the way up there. Masahiro Kawamura, your favorite long shot, was well. He was in that final group going in on Saturday, and to fall off like he did. I mean, you put yourself in those chances enough, it's going to have some days like that, and then you're going to have days when you're going to go 1, 2, 3 on the podium too. I firmly believe that. And felt confident in our approach. Feel really confident in the European side as they approach now the Ryder Cup next week. So overall, I think they're trending very, very well, and it's a fun week ahead of us. But we get to look at a previous Ryder Cup, the last one we saw in Europe at the Open de France, or I guess now the Cazoo Open de France, played at Le Golf National. Tom, if you want to kind of remind people what we've seen of this course in the past, and maybe if there's any changes or iterations you think that could happen around this time.
Yes, I think it was always kind of marked as this ball striker's paradise that played sometimes into links golfers' hands based on the kind of stadium golf area and the hazards and things like that. Wind could certainly be a factor, and we saw some tough conditions in the past. So it used to be kind of a high-scoring event where not shorter hitters excelled, but you didn't need to be a long hitter, which meant that those that were best with their irons and wedges really led the way, right? Whereas when it came to the move to October, over the last couple of years, we've seen two winners in Nicholas Colsaerts and Guido Migliozzi that, you know, suggest that you need to hit the ball a little bit further. I mean, Guido even beat Rasmus Højgaard as well. So there was a kind of change there that maybe distance matters. I'm gambling that we can go back to what it was like before, and that because we've had this kind of really late summer in the UK and Europe, that the move back to September before the Ryder Cup, a little bit of baking out on the golf course potentially. I think these short hitters can get in the mix again. So I ultimately believe that this is, literally like a plotter's course. And I've seen, me and David Tyndall spoke about this on the DP World Tour podcast yesterday, that like US Open players have done really well here. Like you look at kind of Martin Keimer and people like that have won here. Tommy Fleetwood's contended here, or won here, sorry, and contended the US Opens. Graham McDowell's won the US Open and won here. And I don't think there's anything to do with those particular US Open venues, because obviously they're all different every year. But I think it's the mindset of being able to plot around these golf courses, take your medicine when you need to, and I think that could really play a factor. And then one course correlation that I'll go into, Sky, before we get started here, is Celtic Manor, and I can't ignore it. Graham McDowell, Alex Noren, and Songchai Jaidee have won at both golf courses. Nicholas Colsaerts was fourth at Celtic Manor before winning here. Joost Luiten have won at Celtic Manor and finished 9th, 11th and 18th here. Peter Uihlein and Richard Sterney have both finished second at both courses. So whilst I didn't play Celtic Manor between 2015, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, they played 4 events there, because they also had that Celtic Classic, didn't they, as well as the Wales Open, I think, in 2020. So as we come into one of my later picks, and maybe you as well, that will be a factor in that decision, because there has just been a lot of crossover, and I think it's not a similar test, but one that again rewards the people that play the course well, sensibly, and really dial in their approach play.
Yeah, I think that's the key to me overall, is there does seemingly seem to be a potential shift in what this year could play out, and that's good boots on the ground or over the pond intel from you guys, because the leaderboard definitely did not shake out that way. I mean, I don't really put Guido in a class that needs the driver. I mean, if you recall, Rasmus Højgaard was 8 clear at one point on Saturday morning of everybody. His Saturday was one of the weirdest rounds I think we've ever seen, where he could have shot like an 85, yet he putted the lights out still that day to remain somewhat in the mix. Guido's amazing round on Sunday, the round of the year, is what won it for him. But if you really looked through, I mean, Rasmus, Jordan Smith was up there overall. George Coetzee has done incredibly well at this event. Paul Barjan, who normally is somebody who's a little bit longer hitting. Thomas Peters, all up there. 19, you mentioned Colsaerts, Coetzee again. Hugo Leon, who is somebody with kind of a bigger driver too. I just think that shift is what people got comfortable with. That was not what the 2018 Ryder Cup looked like, and I think we could definitely fall back into those hands. I went with a simple equation for my betting card, and we're also going to be talking some of the daily fantasy stuff as we look through some of the zones, because we're doing the show on Tuesday versus Monday, and we have salaries and decent contests. But the recipe for me was, I think it matters to play off the short grass here when you can, and you need to be lights out with your iron. So I'm looking for golfers who can lead both of those categories, who can be number one in fairways, and can you gain with your irons to be top of the field? That was my recipe, and that kind of played out a pretty simple betting card from my end overall. There were some definite questions, though, on which one at the top of the leaderboard was going to be my selection, because 3 of them, in my opinion, could do both of them. Tom Kim coming over after a decent week at Wentworth. Alexander Bjork, somebody who you are very keen on, who could absolutely do that. The only reason for me, I was a little scared off of the recent form, and because that gives me the tick to Aaron Rai, who I'm starting the betting card at 16-1. Aaron Rai this week. Like we mentioned, last week, absolutely exceptional. You kind of liked the feedback overall on Rai's form, on Rai's setup at Wentworth, and then to move beyond that and play as well as he did, to me, it just screams what is needed at Le Golf National. That form, the middling but steady PGA Tour season he has had, and I think he's a class above some of these guys here, and could very well be 12-1. So 16s for me on Rai is definitely where I want to start the betting card. So give this out on Alexander Bjork, because I think it's very close.
Yeah. So the again, it was, I didn't necessarily get to Aaron Rai, but I could see the kind of head-to-head and the decision you might have to play with there. I think what really kind of broke it for me was that Rai's played here twice and missed the cut both times, and Look, as we go on to my picks later on, I'm kind of steering away from this in terms of having to have the course form right. Like, I don't think it's everything. But he came into that Open de France in 2019 off the back of an 18th at the Italian Open, 26th at Wentworth, which so a decent warm up, and didn't really do anything. He obviously missed the cut, and then I don't know why. Like, I don't see why he wouldn't play well here, and crucially, he actually won on the Challenge Tour in France as well, which I think is a really important form line to consider. So I don't know why he struggled there, but the reason I went with Bjork over Rye, similar profiles, I think, both capable of, as you said, leading the irons, leading the fairways. With Bjork, it was just very simple: third, 8th, and 20th here. 54-hole leader in 2017, 8th in 2018 when he was 7th after 54 holes, and then even last year when he was 20th, which is his worst finish so far. He was 2nd after round 1, shooting a 64, 4th after round 2 going into the weekend, and hit a terrible Saturday 76, but bounced back nicely with a 69 on Sunday to kind of make it respectable. So the fact that he missed the cut at the Irish Open doesn't bother me too much, because he bounced straight back with an 18th at Wentworth, and don't necessarily see him in the upper echelons of being able to contend at Wentworth, which is why I kind of took a week off of him anyway. So for me, I'm excited to get back on Bjork in a field where I think it's weak enough that he could win. And ultimately, I think Sky's got to finish this season with a win to not be bitterly disappointed.
Yeah, it's understandable. I think when I looked at the course form, I mean, it's always an uptick, but there was one crossover top 10. Cazoo was 3rd in 2019. He was 3rd in 2022. Outside of that, there was 0 repeating top 10s. Guido miscut pass, Rasmus Højgaard first time at the course, Paul Barjan first time at the course. 2019 was kind of a similar story, with Martin Keimer being the only one that had the crossover top 10. Now, the previous iterations, when maybe that course was a little bit stickier and a little bit different, there was some. Noren had a ton of success. Rob, repeat success. Bjork, like you mentioned. So, Bjork's form when it was the old style could be definitely something. But to me, I think I don't know. I have almost 0 course history going for me in any of my selections, and it was just because we've seen some randomness at Le Golf National. So that was my lean. Now, in DraftKings, this is where it's kind of a little bit peculiar to me. There was a clear separation on the odds boards from Bjork to Rye. I mean, Bjork was as long, I guess, 20-1. I feel like there were some 22s upon open. Rye is 16 down to 14 in a lot of books. But Bjork is the one who is priced higher in daily fantasy. 10.3 for Bjork, 10.1 for Rye, 10.9 for Tom Kim. The one in the middle there, Minwoo Lee, who seems to, be nowhere near betting cards due to the erraticness of what his driver could bring in. How would you rank those 4 if you were playing them in fantasy?
Kim 1, Bjork 2, Rye 3, Minwoo Lee 4. I guess you could probably pause on Kim being 1 if you just don't want to pay up 400 more than everybody else. So I could almost go with Bjork, Rye, Kim, Lee as well. Because I do think you're paying a decent premium on Kim. And I think you do, whilst you're at this course, and you've talked about the volatility of course form here, I do think you almost need to build lineups with as many potential winners as possible. Whereas, like, sometimes in DFS, you can kind of go top heavy and take a long shot on some of these reliable course operators, right? In the low 6Ks or 7Ks. I think this week it's going to be a case of, because we still don't 100% know whether there has been a transformation in the way you can attack this course or not. I think you do need to pause and just make sure you get yourself the people that can blend both. So I do think it's probably wise to give yourself some extra salary. With Minwoo Lee, look, if it's changed to what we've seen over the last couple of renewals, then he'll be fine. He'll absolutely love it. And one thing I did like about him is that when you consider how well he's played in the US Open, how well he'd played at the Players' Championship, where there's a lot of risk reward and a lot of water and things like that, I do think he can be reined in when it's important to. But he's just so erratic, isn't he? And like he just goes completely off he doesn't seem to have that gear where he can kind of bring it back if he's struggling. Is what worries me a little bit. So As much as he's in fine form with 5th, 9th, 15th, 7th, and 14th in his last kind of 6 or 7 starts, I do think we should potentially look at some safer options, especially in DraftKings.
Yeah, the only thing that Minwoo, like, outside of, I think he's the most talented of the bunch. I guess that's tough because Tom Kim's great, but and he's won twice on the PGA Tour, so maybe it's a step. But man,
yeah, I think it's still Kim for now. But I think the upside of modern golf suggests that Minwoo Lee could be better in 5-6 years' time.
Yeah, I guess the only thing would be like if, and this is like 2 or 3 levels deep of thinking. If everyone is saying Minwoo Lee doesn't make sense, then like Minwoo Lee probably makes the most sense there.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone, I mean, Aberg, as much as it was last week, he was cheap. Maybe not the course fit that I looked at, and he was lower owned than he should have been. I'm not saying this is the exact same recipe for Minwoo, but Bjork's probably my 4th just because I don't think I'm okay with it in the betting. I much prefer Rye personally on the current form and upside a little bit on my end. And Rye's cheapest. I think Rye would be the clear number 1 on my end for it.
Well, I guess it does just depend on ownership. Like if Bjork's suddenly the highest owned or projecting to be the highest owned, then
I think Bjork. Bjork will be the third owned. I think it'll go
Kim, Rye.
It will go Kim, Rye, Minwoo, and Bjork might be close there, which probably is, very. And I felt the same for your Bjork when he was priced. He got priced like this before too. When it must have been the Irish where he was priced up a little bit in a range where we didn't think he would be. Obviously, didn't come through then, but
I think he was quite high at Crans as well, wasn't he? And we kind of talked about him.
And he was very owned there. And he played well.
Yeah, and like I think he can live up to it. That's my pause with just like, because sometimes I'd say to you like I'm just going to bet him, but ignore him in DFS because the ownership's too good. But I think just with the floor that I think he offers, he's someone that I think should be in your team. I agree with you. If everyone's kind of saying the same thing of, we can't go in Minwoo Lee because he's going to drive it off the planet, then just give him a go because sometimes talent just wins out, especially in the DP odds.
Yep, absolutely. Moving down betting cards. So I guess, we're going to kind of go simultaneously through DFS and betting. I have one selection in here. You're a little bit deeper down the board. So I'll talk about who, to me, is my favorite value, and that's Yannick Paul, who's 33-1 currently. Yannick Paul, I guess, of the ones, if I am looking at course history angle, right, Paul played very well on debut, finishing 8th in 2022. But what Yannick Paul does well is this type of course where, again, he's very strong in a lot of different aspects. Has gained in the irons ever since, I think it's now been 9 weeks in a row. Since the Betfred British Masters, he's been positive every single week. Putter hasn't, he basically goes by the putter. If he's going to putt well, you're finding him on the front page of the leaderboard. He's going to hit fairways, and he's just somebody that I think fits this type of recipe that can lead the course in accuracy, lead in irons, and you pray that the putter goes well. I think we're kind of through that stage of Ryder Cup snubbing or Ryder Cup being on their minds. If Yannick's still showing up to play here, he's here to play. He's here to earn a PGA Tour card. Right, he's 17th right now in the Rolex rankings. We're closing in quickly on the end of the season. I guess month and a half kind of left. But Yannick Paul to me is the recipe that can do that in the 9Ks in the mid range for betting. You can get him in places in the 20s. I'm okay going win only there. So he's my second selection.
Yeah, so Dave Tyndall brought Yannick Paul up, and we kind of discussed the Ryder Cup snub thing, and I think it's far enough removed now that he'll be over it. I think when you've got that constant reminder of all 12 players right in front of you at Wentworth, and you didn't do enough to make that team, and there's a lot of story about Moronk being snubbed, and you're not even really talked about, even though you're in the points for X amount of months, right? I think there's probably a case of feeling sorry for yourself. I think now he's 1 week removed from that again. It's okay, right? This is a tournament I actually can win, and let's just move forward. 2 times in France last year, or 2 years ago, sorry, He finished 11th, which is a bonus. So I think Paul offers plenty. He's someone that he probably hasn't lived up to what I thought he was going to be this year, and that's very critical considering he's been second, 6th, 3rd, 8th, and 10th throughout the season. I guess it's just the back-to-back 45th place finishes in 2 really strong events is a concern, but I do think a lot of that would have been Ryder Cup talk because you can pretty much draw parallels around it, right? Like at the Scottish Open, the Open Championship would have been 2 big events for him. He was terrible off the tee at the Open, and that's why he missed the cut. But otherwise, he was pretty solid at the Scottish, 25th, 10th for the Czech, and then you could see it really, getting difficult crunch time, 20th, 45th, 45th. I think he'll look at Robert McIntyre and think, I don't think you deserve to be on this team. So I think he'll still be a little bit bothered, and hopefully he doesn't get paired with Robert McIntyre because I think that would be bad. But they might even be out already, the pairings. But I think for me, Paul is a good play because I think that he is talent-wise up there and almost being discounted a little bit because you've got Kim, Lee, Fox, Rye in the field, and then Bjork, Dietrich, Horschel. Like there's a lot of players there that you think, okay, why would you take Yannick Paul over these guys? But the odds reflect that. So long way of saying I think it's a pretty solid pick.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. Like his form earlier in the year, you would have thought, like, man, he was making the leap that a lot of guys have started to, and that cooled off. Yannick is an exceptional Thursday player. I think it's like 6 out of the last 7 events he's been inside the top 12 after Thursday, and those big time events. I mean, at the Scottish Open too. So I expect him to come out hot. I expect him to be right there in the mix and can come through. And if you looked at him from a DFS perspective, Yannick is 9,300, which is some fair savings. Around him in the 9Ks, Ryan Fox, last week's exceptional winner at 900. Smith, 9.7. Bob Mack, 9.5. Billy Horschel, 9.4. Dietrich, 9.2. Rasmus, 9.1. Antoine Roster, 9K flat. Clear chalk to me, Thomas Dietrich this week. Are you in or out on him?
Out. No, I just don't feel the need to play him. I think the real discussion here is what you do with Ryan Fox, because last year he won twice, and he won the Ras Al Khaimah and then finished 15th on his next start on the DP World Tour, which was a decent break actually. He won in February and then didn't play again until April. Is that right? And then he went win 15th and then followed that up with 3 straight top 9 finishes and pretty much carried that form all the way along. Then he went miscut, withdraw, miscut, win, miscut, but then 4th and 2nd. So it's a long way of saying that I think he's the sort of person that can keep form up even after winning. And he's got a 6th, a 44th and 18th here. And I don't think anyone would necessarily, not anyone, but I don't think many people were looking at Ryan Fox last week and saying he's a great course fit for Wentworth. So somewhere where he's already proven that he's got a 6th place finish and an 18th, I think it's someone that you should actually keep an eye on and maybe just drop down to if you're undecided in the top 10s.
Yeah, I love going back to the winner the previous week. I think it gets overlooked. People played too much of an angle. Shout out to Jamie Worsley last week being the solo bet in the industry on Fox, winning that. It's always a fun feeling to hit that. So I think Fox is an exceptional play. Especially, I mean, if people overthink that angle, a Minwoo Fox start of a lineup is kind of spicy and something that might not be the traditional route. I mean, if he won at Wentworth with how erratic his accuracy is, man, he can do some damage here. I'm okay skipping McIntyre. Horschel seems like it would be a fun type of play here. He's been really good when it comes to fantasy scoring. His birdies are up plenty. He gets lots of low rounds. His finishes may not be what you would want for somebody you got to pay up a little bit more for. I mean, 18th was still okay last week. But even at the Irish, he scored a ton. I kind of like him maybe here to pair up with Yannick too. Yeah,
because people are going to just look at the Sunday rounds and just pause on him for a betting perspective, right? But as you said, when it comes to DraftKings scoring, it doesn't really matter. So when you're focusing on just what he's doing in this format, that's all that you really care about, I guess. Like 97.5 points last time at 83, 111, 95 his last 4 events. You should probably play him. Like, he's been what, 9K and 8.5K the last 2 weeks. He's 9.4 now, but I think that's a fair reflection of kind of 2 steady weeks of scoring and a weaker field.
Yeah, I'm with you on passing on Dietrich Chalk too. I think I would like to make more of a stand there and be underweight or avoid higher dollar, just because, man, his finishes do not show. Even though he was solo lead on Saturday morning, right? Like, it's a tough go for him. I don't think anybody. I mean, Smith is. I wouldn't mind Smith. I mean, he seems like he could play well here, but I don't feel the need as much as somebody like Fox, Yannick, and Billy would be my 3 favorites.
Yeah, I think with Smith, it's one of those ones where we've been at 3 or 4 courses now where you think this is a perfect golf course for him, and I think that again this week. And he's finished 30th, 21st, and 7th here, but he seems to flatter to deceive, a little bit like Dietrich, just hasn't got that kind of mentality he had last year. So I think we're looking at Fox really as my only standout in the 9s. Paul I do like, and Horseshoe I do like, but I'm very much with you, and I never know what to do with Rasmus Højgaard. Like, I literally don't. He's the type that I guess if you want to get really different, I guess you go Minwoo Lee, Rasmus, and do something from there. But like, because he has the upside to win, but I can't do it.
No, I'm very far off of Rasmus personally. I mean, he's somebody that you probably get at 1 to 2% that has the upside. So, but these contests aren't big enough, in my opinion, to have to make that type of stand at that price. On down the board. Next up is if you're telling me somebody who's going to lead this week in strokes gained approach, I'm going to pick the golfer who has basically done so for 4 consecutive events, right?
Yeah.
Connor Syme has been exceptional, absolutely exceptional with his irons. I mean, 4 straight top 4s, probably if he putted to any degree, could have really found himself into the mix on a lot of those. It's the question of how is Sunday going to factor for him? It just seems like a matter of time, Tom. It really does. He's accurate. He just lines up to everything you could possibly ask for. I'm betting places with him. He's 45 to 1 with 6 places here in the States. It's important for me to get the places with him, but tell us why even more so that we really like him this week.
Yeah, look, you get 8 places with him in the UK, right? So that's why we're very confident on Connor Syme and being able to play. So, look, I talked about that Celtic Manor angle earlier in the show, and it was basically for this one player. 2nd, 3rd, 8th, and 18th at Celtic Manor between 2020 and 2022. Best chance to win. He comes second behind Callum Shinkwin, a decent amount as well. Shinkwin played well that day. Obviously, he has missed those 2 cuts. A little bit like Aaron Wright. It looks like a good golf course for him, but he hasn't proven it yet. So like you, I'm definitely going with that recent form over kind of the course history there. But like you said, the approach numbers are ridiculous, and they're actually even more ridiculous when you consider that he lost like over 2 on tee's green yesterday, or Sunday, sorry, and like nearly 2 on approach. And it was all basically that one hole where he literally went out of bounds, then hit a provisional on the water, then hit another on the water. He still finished 3rd in approach and 8th in tee's green. He's 1st in both those metrics since the return. So I don't know how you get away from someone like Connor Syme, because look, he's got 4 straight top 10s, as you already referenced. He's got the form at the similar courses that we like. You could argue he's gone 4th, 3rd, 7th, and 10th. Maybe he's trending in the wrong direction. I would say let's pause on that, because he's been 7th and 10th in 2 stronger fields in recent weeks, and really and truly final round on Sunday. Look, I wasn't completely surprised at all. I was surprised when he goes and makes a 7 after going out of bounds and twice in the water, but you're not surprised to see Connor Syme go backwards, especially in that kind of elite company. I think it's going to be a real wake-up call of, okay, I'm going to drop in quality this week. I'm not going to be paired with Tommy Fleetwood and being chased by Rahm and having to take on a sensation like Aberg. Let's just get the job done. So yeah, pretty confident that Connor Syme's gonna go well again this week.
Yep, Totally agree. Echo all of that. And if I'm going to go with the approach in which I have, like, it would be incorrect to not land on Connor Syme this week. He is at 8.7K, surrounded by Olsen, Victor Perez, a popular Adrian Otegwe this week at the higher eights. And then your next selection, who I think Otegwe, Kimsey, and honestly, Connor Syme are all going to be popular in this middle range. But talk to us about Nathan Kimsey and why you're keen on him again.
Yeah, so I think Nathan Kimsey's that classic bet him, but maybe don't play him in lineups, because as much as he looks pretty safe and he looks a good bet, he's the type of person I think that could just finish, I don't know, 27th and really flatter the seed. I think the betting number's good enough to take a chance on him. He's had a really solid summer. I mean, a lot of people listening to this show will be thinking about the Barbasol Championship where he lost in the playoff to Vincent Norman. Obviously, he could have won there and got his PGA Tour card, but I'm just going to go back to his debut, and he had a really poor rookie season on the DP World Tour, then the European Tour. But when he was at this golf course, he was second after round one, fifth going into the weekend, and that's huge at an event, at a golf course that demands confident play in a season where he was poor. So the fact that he's now going to come up here with his sort of tail up was great with the approach last week. 6th in strokes gained approach, 17th tee to green. 28th kind of really strong Wentworth field, and you consider 12 of those players are Ryder Cuppers, right? I'm pretty confident that Kimsey's going to come through and finish inside that top 8 for me in the betting perspective, top 6 for you guys in the US. But there is a slight pause in terms of, is there a better DraftKings option for him? Because I don't necessarily know he's going to get it done by this electric scoring. I feel like he's going to be pretty steady and then kind of make the scoring where he needs to.
Yeah, the only, I mean, he was right there in asking my question. He's going to be leading the field, or quite close in accuracy. And his irons are more spiking versus consistency, like Connor Syme has there, or some of the other guys that I've been on. But his spike weeks have been exceptional on it. But even like at the Barbasol, he did lose strokes approach that week when he, found himself in that playoff. So, I don't know. That was the only holdback for him. I mean, Otegwe makes a lot of sense too. Accuracy, irons, played well at this type of course, or at this course. So I can see there. Now Guido might be on an island $100 below those guys. Like I think Connor Syme, no matter what, for me, I feel confident in that of those 3 guys at the top 8Ks. I mean, Thor, if he's going to get overlooked at 8.9, could make some sense. Wentworth isn't really his jam and played okay. 30-30 kind of fell off with his irons.
So that 30-30 is actually really impressive for him. And he got better throughout the week. So on Olsen, I think because he's at that top range, he might get overlooked, like you say. Guido is what he is. I think I can't see him coming out and doing exactly what he did last year, but he will be overlooked a little bit, I think. I am definitely interested in these lower 8Ks in this range.
Yeah. Full disclosure with Guido kind of being now in a different betting range than what he has, right? He's not on the betting card, but the upside always does exist. I mean, this is where he won last year out of completely nowhere, basically, even me who bets him every week was not, featured on Guido last time around. So, but to me, the one that I really love in the 8Ks and betting at 66-1 with 6 places is Henny Duplessis. Henny Duplessis, his irons 3 consecutive weeks have been gaining at least a quarter stroke of around his best irons in stretch at the BMW PGA Championship, a sneaky 10th at Wentworth last week. Off the tee was firing. Where I do have some questions for Henny, he's not going to be the one that's going to lead in accuracy. He's popped time and time again at accuracy, but it's not a consistent part of his game. But he has not missed a cut since the Italian Open, which was all the way back in May. He's just had a sneaky strong year, and it's been led lately by these irons. So to me, that recipe of trending consistent irons, playing weekends, showing up at a course that should fit. Not that he's, bad off the tee. He is gaining strokes off the tee almost every single week. I think it's 7 out of the last 8 events he's been in the positive. So he's going to ball strike his way around here. He's going to play well, in my opinion. He made the cut on his debut. So 8,100 for me is where I really, really like in the 8Ks. How do you do the C?
Yeah, so I think with Duplessis, I think he's a. I feel like we talked about him a few weeks in a row now and not got there, and I feel like that's how I felt exactly this week. I wanted to be the week that I was on him. I felt like the lower field strength would help with that. I'd maybe want to go to him, but it's to your point of he's been gaining off the tee, but it's been a lot of distance, and if this is going to play the way it did previous to Nicholas Colsaut's win in 2019, then I think he might struggle. Because he's the way he's been playing, they're still kind of middling results, right? So I think from a betting perspective, yes, the Templars are really good last week, and his approach numbers were the best they've been since the real start of the year. I just have a slight hang up on him, but I think he's a solid player in this. I think Grant Forrest is also interesting from a DraftKings perspective. I think he's just playing some good golf, but again, potentially someone that needs a little bit more room off the tee and the distance, right? So you split the middle of Richie Ramsey, who is the accurate type. If it goes back to what it was before, then it could be really appealing. But I think Duplessis is probably the player 8,100 there.
Yeah. The other one that comes to mind is the consistency of what we've seen out of Jorge Campillo, right? I guess you're still paying a premium for somebody who seemingly should be around for the weekend. He did say on Chasing Pars, Craig Thompson's podcast, when he interviewed Campillo, that Le Golf National is his favorite golf course on tour. So we've seen it in a couple better results. Hasn't been, overall the best here, but Campillo can always turn it on. So I think him, 8K makes sense. I think a lot of people will lean on Matt Southgate, somebody who plays in the fairway, plays good irons. Can make that argument. To me, when Matthew Southgate gets popular, I run the other way personally. So I'm okay skipping and getting down into the 7s, where we will pick up the pace a little bit more. If I looked at people that could end up being popular, I think Marcel Siem will get clicked a lot. 7,700 seems to be a decent value. Again, he's more of the erraticness versus consistency in some of these compartments in which I'd ask for, but I think he popped quite a bit. Callum Shinkwin, somebody who definitely is on a lot of betting cards after exceptional performance last week at Wentworth. You mentioned the Celtic Manor. That's right up Shinkwin's success line. So he is available at, $7,600. The one that stood out to me a little bit, I paid way too much for Laurie Cantor the last time we saw him on the DP World Tour. He's done nothing but not play well anywhere. But man, 7,700 versus, he had to be almost 10K the last time we saw Laurie Cantor on the DP World Tour. It was 22s when I bet him. So I think he, for me, in this kind of range, would be the one. But you've got one, Rikuya Hoshino, that you're intrigued at in the outright market. So talk to us overall on Hoshino.
Yeah, so first of all, echo your sentiments. I knew you'd go Laurie Cantor when I saw the price. I completely understand it. Callum Shinkwin, I was very close to betting on, but he went from 100 to 1 down to 70, 80. And by that point, I'd kind of paused. He's not the type that every time you think Callum Shinkwin's going to play well, he doesn't, is the kind of feeling I get. So I was quite happy to run the other way, like you said, on Campillo there. I think Rikuya Hoshino is the type of person that can break through at any point. This is a person that's won throughout his whole career, and okay, it's been in Japan, but he turned professional in 2016, won on the Japanese Challenge Tour in 2017, and then won every single year from 2018 to 2022 on the Japan Tour. He won twice in 2021, and he lost a playoff in 2019 and 2022. So he could have easily had 3 multiple win seasons in Japan. And then when he's come over to the DP World Tour regularly this season, 6th at the Ras Al Khaimah Championship, where he was top 4 after 54, and then he was so he's 6th at the Ras Al Khaimah Championship. Then he was inside the top 4 after 54 holes at home at the ISPS Handa, where we were kind of looking at these Japanese players that had been playing regularly. Then finished 3rd at the BMW International Open, which I liked. If it is going to get a little bit longer this week, then at least he's shown that he can turn up on a good golf course like that. Made the cut at the Open Championship, which was impressive. 7th at the Irish Open and 25th last week at Wentworth, where he's 12th going into Sunday. I'm a pretty big believer in like winning form can travel. I think we've seen it in kind of Tom Kim and players like that. And look, I'm not saying Hoshino is in Tom Kim's stratosphere in terms of ability, but we have seen that these players, if they do impress in age, they can bring it over here. And US Open winners, as I said to you last, at the start of the show, have done well at this golf course. And his best ever major finish is 26th at Torrey Pines in 2021, and he was top 5 after round 1. So a little bit of an extra thing there for Hoshino. I just overall think he's a very solid, tidy player that's maybe overlooked because people don't know a ton about him, and admittedly I don't until I just look at kind of betting into him. So hasn't got those kind of standout approach numbers that we've liked so far with our picks, but I think Hoshino brings that winning edge from previous years.
Yeah, he's a fun one. The U.S. Open angle is interesting. I totally forgot that about him. And then that does make me think about Guido's U.S. Open track record of 2 top 20s.
And I think that's why
for him.
That's why Dave brought it up, because like Guido's not someone you think about that should succeed at the U.S. Open and has done twice. So like I think that could be a massive thing. And when you look at McDowell and players like that in the past, it's definitely travelled. So yeah, I think it's just a fun thing to add to Hoshino. I was betting him either way. Like that US Open was a bonus thing.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. So I looked it up. Laurie Cantor was 9,600 last time we saw him at the DP World Tour. So huge gap, and the field wasn't all that much different in strength probably. So we see that. To me, that's kind of my thoughts on the high 7s. Low 7s is where I fill it up a little bit more. I am betting Daniel Brown this week. So Daniel Brown, somebody, I guess 7.5K in DFS. You can find him 100-1 with 6 places here in the States. Daniel Brown, breakthrough winner at the ISPS Honda. So that was the event Cantor was in. So not that strong relative compared to this. But Brown came out 14th at the Czech Masters the week after that. He was 7th at the Barbasol Championship. And then last week at BMW, he popped once again with these irons. So we're looking at 4 of the last 5 weeks with rather quality irons for him. He is, that guy that leads in fairways quite frequently, or at least is showing that side of his game all year long. I just, really like what Brown has put together. Again, I'm not scared of a recent win. He came off firing almost immediately after that. So at this side of the game, chipping can be a problem if he's able to hit the greens like he has to here to excel. That to me screams Daniel Brown week with his game.
Yeah, he's been really impressive since he won. Like, he barely made the cut in Ireland and finished 83rd, which shows a problem with the cut line rather than anything else in Ireland. But the fact that he actually finished 51st at Wentworth is fine. Like, it'll probably be an event that he sort of circled once he won. I don't know if he was actually in it beforehand, but closed with a 68 there. Followed up his win with a 14th for the Czech Masters, which I wouldn't necessarily have thought of him as the type of person that contends there either. So the confidence that's shown, I mean, to go 17th, 7th, 1st, 14th in a 4-event stretch, and then make the cut in 2 of the biggest fields of the year for Daniel Brown, I was pretty impressed. So not surprised at all to see you on him. And as you say, the approach player finishing 10th in the last 3 events in strokes gained approach is encouraging. So, yep, absolutely no problems at all with Daniel Brown.
Yeah, so he's the one that's my pick of the litter and kind of in that higher range. I think Matthew Baldwin made some sense. 2, you can kind of make an argument. I mean, he won by $1 million earlier this year. But Tom, I'm going back to the well for my final selection. You can get him, I think he's 125 with the places here in the States. I'll confirm when we wrap up our betting cards. But the ball striking madness of Dan Bradbury, it just continues, Tom. It is something that I think is being slept on in a lot of ways because his putter has been bad. I mean, he's gained once with the putter in his last 9 events, and that was when he finished T8 at the British Masters, where he was also outside of the top 100 after the first round. We didn't have any strokes gained putting from his win in Joburg, but outside of that, so he's been positive 3 times this year with a putter. That is all we have on Dan Bradbury. And what we do see, though, his irons last week, really, really good against a quality field, finishing 51st, even when he missed the cut at the Irish Open. Exceptional irons at the Open Championship where he could not putt or chip, was very positive with the irons again, too. And then off the tee, he's just very, very consistent. Again, outside of the Irish Open and the Porsche European Open, which he withdrew from, he's been positive in every single event since March. And what we just see from him is no matter the field, no matter where it is, he just has this elevated iron game that I think is so slept on. So last week, what was pretty interesting about it too, if you went into the round by round, so he was overall, let's see, for the strokes gained approach, he was 16th last week, but that included negative 2.2 strokes in Thursday. He then led the field in irons on Friday, was 23rd with irons on Saturday, 10th on Sunday, and you saw him creep up that leaderboard. So if he can find himself with any type of short game, I truly believe Bradbury can win big events with this. This is, I mean, he won his first ever event, right? Like this is something that he has in his bag of tricks. So at a true ball striking test, his accuracy was the best I think it's ever been. I think he was third last week in accuracy in the field. So exceptional from that side of the game. I just think if it plays out the old way, man, I couldn't pick somebody better, in my opinion, from this type of the board that I trust in the ball striking compartment.
There's only a handful of players in this field that are going to rank top 10 in strokes gained approach and tee screen over the last month or so since the return, and he's one of them, right? So to very quickly summarise and sort of reflect on what you said, that's the reasoning for it, right? Especially if it plays the way it did previously, that is going to really come to the fore. So again, another person a little bit like Brown, I guess very similar players, right? Like both English, both broke through this season, both got wins earlier than probably expected, and both have managed to cope with their wins. I think pretty, Bradbury hasn't necessarily got the results he wanted, but you already highlighted why. So yeah, absolutely fine with it.
Yeah. So both those two, he's 125 to 1 with the places. I like 7,100 and 7,500. Around that range, Tom, who sticks out to you in the low sevens?
A player we wanted to go to last week that didn't play, Afi Barmrek could be interesting.
Yes, I was hoping. I almost bet him. I was very, very close here.
Yeah. Like if you look at his course form, it's not great. Miscut 43rd, miscut, disqualified 45th. But if you look round by round, he was 12th after 54 holes in 2014. And he was pretty solid through 3 rounds last year, 69, 71, 71. So, then finished with a 73. So, that's not the easiest thing to do. Okay, he's not got the real low round that you expect from someone like Afi Barmrek at his best. But it's a player, a little bit like Karamora last week at Wentworth. Like, he's got a decent set of rounds. Karamora, obviously, far better course form at Wentworth than Afi Barmrek here. But he's got those 2 spike weeks, 15th at the British Masters, 33rd 2 weeks ago at the Irish Open, that suggest that Afi Barmrek can excel in a weaker field. So I think he's one at 7,100. Andy Sullivan's interesting based on just course history and the Celtic Manor link, but I don't know that I necessarily trust Andy Sullivan ever. So that would be one thing to consider, but decent enough last week at Wentworth, 36th place. 47th at the Barracuda. So there's been a couple of results. He's just so hard to trust. Sadier was someone that came up for me. Where did he come up? We talked about him. He played well. It was at Crowns, right? He finished 13th, and he's missed the cut since the Irish Open. I'm just going to look at his form at this golf course. I haven't delved too much into it. So he's got a 16th place finish here. I just think with the way that Sadier's been playing, that 16th, 32nd, two renewals ago, a 45th. He can get you through the cut line, Sadier. So 7-3, he's kind of interesting considering his current form before the Irish Open. And then I think you've got to take some chances here. Like if it turns out that he is big hitting, I think Paratore could be interesting. But yeah, I think this is where you've got to consider the build and the lineups at the top, Sky, because I do think it gets very slim after kind of low sevens.
Yeah, I think James Morrison is somebody who could make some sense. I think he's made 5 cuts in a row, came out almost first round leader last week. If not, Baroff is on him this week, and was on last week too and played. Yeah,
2nd and 7th, of course. So if it goes anything back, I mean, look, even when it's gone to what we consider the bigger hitted course, he still made the cut 3 times and He was 22nd after 36 holes last year. So any sort of regression to the mean in terms of not requiring the distance is going to be a massive factor for him. What about an old faithful guy in Ross Fisher?
I haven't said his name in a little bit. I mean, he fits the bill of what I ask for here. Right?
Like he was 8th at Maiden Himmerland, 3rd after 36 holes. He was 23rd at the Irish Open, where he was 4th after 54 holes and played really poorly on Sunday. And then when you look at his course form as well, it's fine. Like he's got 34th, 26th, 22nd, 7th. I would say he's probably playing somewhere in between what he was showing when he was 22nd and 7th. So I think Ross Fisher at 7 could be interesting as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into the sixes, and we'll wrap this thing up. Before, I want to make sure I give a shout out to our audio listeners. You can find us at Daily Fantasy Sports, Picks and Bets, The Mix, available on all different audio platforms. Rate, review, subscribe for us. You can find us too on YouTube, where the likes and comments go a long way. Try to make sure I swing back there and comment back to anybody. We've seen a lot of love this past month, so really appreciate that, as the DFS contests have rewarded us with more listeners, and so we've appreciated everything Pat Mayo and you listeners have done for us. In the Ryder Cup is a huge week next week to represent on kind of the content side for the Europeans too. So 6Ks. Again, I don't really have any long shots this week. Nothing spoke to me to that degree. I'm going to rip through guys as I go down pricing that I thought at least somewhat showed up. Catlin could be somebody, in my opinion, that I trust to be accurate, to play with the irons. Hasn't done, I guess, all that much. I think we liked him a few weeks ago where he made the weekend, but didn't do all that much. I think it was at Omega. Nacho Elvira, as scary as it could be at 6,700, I believe a winner at the Celtic Manor, right, Tom? Matt Cooper tipped him this week. Which we saw him being the first round leader at the Omega and still missed the cut recently, and then a 23rd at the Irish last week. Missed the cut at Wentworth, but he was a second out of nowhere at the Himmerland. So Nacho Elvira, $6,700, could see, if you're okay with the distance angle, Freddie Scott, 6,700, still stays in those sixes there with it. If I'm going to keep going, Jeremy Gandon, I thought was intriguing if you're going to dip down. He's played primarily on the Korn Ferry Tour this year and the South America Tour, where South America Tour, he's got multiple top 10s this year. He was 6th at the Utah Championship. He had Monday qualified into some Korn Ferry Tour events, was really good at some of the greens and regulation numbers. So I think 6,500, if you want to play top heavy, he makes some sense there with it. John Perry has popped in some recent form overall in I think he had a second place finish not that long ago, and then made a couple other weekends. Fourth place finish at the ISPS, 2 cuts in a row for that, but terrible iron. So don't really trust him. Access is on Ricardo Santos at $6,400 this week at 750 to 1 in the outright market. We liked Santos after he did miss the cut at the Omega. I thought he was intriguing, popped out of the Challenge Tour and made the weekend there. Below that, we get into some of the guys that have some amateur sides that I could talk on. Tom, is there anybody else in the 6Ks that you're intrigued by?
So I liked Mikael Lindberg at 6,800. I think the ball striking is still there for him. 17th and 13th last 2 weeks in strokes gain approach, and 41st and 20th in tee to green. Considering the strength of field in both of those events, I'm pretty impressed with that. His current form reads 23rd and 36th at the Irish Open and BMW PGA. So just on strength of field and ball striking, you would suggest he's a decent fit for this. I wouldn't hate going back to Kjeldsen again. He was okay for a period of time when it was at Crans. I think that, not Crans, maybe the Irish Open that I put him up. And okay, he fell away after a reasonable start, and missed the cut at Wentworth. But he's a player that has really played well here in the past. He's got a 5th place finish, a 13th place finish, an 8th, a 9th, a 7th. So he's got plenty of stuff here, Kjeldsen, for me, that suggests he can play well. He would need it to go back to what it was in the past, which we're hoping it does. In that case, I think he's fine. So there's 2 guys at 68. you're being asked to pay up for them, obviously, because of the strength of field. You mentioned Elvira there. I think it's tough, Sky. Like I think after that it gets really tough. I'm interested to see what Mark Power does. He's made the cut in the Challenge Tour and the DPL Tour in his 2 starts, and both of them being in Ireland. He's obviously had a lot of home support. But I've been encouraged by what he showed, especially the Irish Open. Every reason to think he could be decent going forward. I think that's it. I think otherwise we're just going for name's sake, and I think you can build up lineups without going that far down.
So if I'm getting really unique in the bigger contest, it has 20K to force. You mentioned Mark Power. John Goff is also playing again this week, the one we were very keen on at the Irish Open, who did not do too well, but had a really good Walker Cup, really good pedigree in Ireland. So he is now fully professional. So I think him, just like Power, you can kind of just plug your nose and think, whatever's going to come, because these guys really do have a lot of upside, in my opinion, at 6,500 and 6,400. If you're going to simply look at golfers who have really good actual strokes, not adjusting for any fields, you're going to have Andoni Echenique. Again, I'm going to really struggle with some of these names because of the French guy. 6,100. He is the Order of Merit leader on the Pro Golf Tour. Also did really well in the Alps Tour. He's got a win and 3 other top 7s in the last 15 weeks. You also have Clement Gouchard, who is second, I believe, on that Pro Golf Tour Order of Merit. He is this week as low. Let's see, Gouchard is also $6,100. So again, we haven't really talked to any French guys, overall. He's 20th, 2nd, 6th, second in his last 4 events on the Pro Golf Tour. Did make a couple cuts on the Challenge Tour earlier this year too. We also have probably the best name that we get to have is the Oyen Guilla guy, Guilla Mondi guy. He is 18 years old. He won recently on the Alps Tour, made the cut at this event last year. 6,500, so priced a little bit. I would much prefer, I would think I would rank him Gandon, Goff, Guillamundi guy for me there of that kind of type of golfer. But he has played pretty well getting up there. In the Challenge Tour, he was in the mix actually a couple weeks ago on the Challenge Tour. But he did miss the cut last week on the Alps Tour, which is, I just don't like seeing a miscut on the Alps Tour leading into this event. From the amateurs, I think the one would have been Hugo Legoff, who was at the minimum this week. He had a really good last outing. I'm trying to think where it was. Let's see, the junior players, which means he's very young. So making kind of debut there. And then Frank Kennedy at $6,100. So Frank Kennedy, somebody who turned pro, I believe at 17, has missed a bunch of cuts on the Challenge Tour. But Frank Kennedy had a really strong junior kind of career, got some opportunities in the professional, even as an amp. Seems to have a bunch of outside. I think he finished 3rd. He lost to the Christo Lampert to get into the Open Championship recently there. So this field does fill out with a lot of those guys. So if you want to really get crazy in the $20, those would be some of the selections on my end. But before we talk about everybody in the field, Tom, let's just review our betting cards and close out for the week.
Yeah, just one more name. At some point, Judge Janawattanon's got to come back, right? Like he's
been so bad.
He's been
so
terrible.
Bad.
Like his off the tee is awful. But all I would say is the symmetry of how bad it's been is getting better. Like it's gone from 6 straight shots off the tee to 5 to 3 to 3 to 2 to 2.4. Like it's going better. It's still horrendous, and it's still probably going to see him miss the cut. But he only marginally lost an approach last week and around the greens as well. If he can just get through the cut, I think he's someone that can be dangerous, because he was 13th here on debut last year and 9th at Celtic Manor. So this is a guy that at the start of the season I was all over, because he finished kind of top 6 in 3 straight events back in the Asian Tour and things like that. But if he's even showing a slight bit of regression to the mean, which is making some cuts, then I think Jazz Janawattanon is a very volatile but rewarding potentially play at 6,400. But I will wrap up my betting card now. So Alexander Bjork at 20 to 1, Connor Seam at 45 to 1, Nathan Kimsey is now down to 50 to 1, which is about the limit that I would go to. And then Rikoya Hishino is 80 to 1. So don't get in the triple digits this week, but happy with that group of golfers there for me.
Yep. For me, it's Aaron Rai, 16 to 1, win only. Yannick Paul, 33 to 1, win only. And then with 6 places, the rest of the guy out here. So Connor Syme, 45 to 1. Kenny Duplessis, 66. Daniel Brown, 100. And Dan Bradbury, 125 to 1. Put a bow on the Cazoo Open de France. Exciting week ahead here. Ryder Cup will be next week, so we'll have some content on our end too, as a huge opportunity for the Euros to take another one on their soil. So thanks again, Tom. Really appreciate you, and best of luck, everybody, this week.